Watch History. I'm Autumn.
And I'm Maggie.
And today we're counting down our top picks for the most underrated people in European history.
Let's get started.
Number 10, John Wycliffe. An English theologian and church reformer, John Wycliffe was the first person to translate the Bible into English. He was a forerunner of the Protestant Reformation and was especially critical of the doctrine of transubstantiation. His attack on the Catholic Church was one born of genuine desire for reform, not anger. He was still condemned as a heretic, and his ideas were denounced by the church.
Number 9, Richard Arkwright. Richard Arkwright, his name isn't quite well renowned. His inventions are nothing less than remarkable. Being the creator of the water loom was not only an invention that changed the American Revolution, but also changed common goods and how easy they were to be accessible to the common people.
Number 8, Madame de Pompadour. Jeanne Antoinette Poisson, better known as Madame de Pompadour, was the official mistress of Louis XV. She had a substantial amount of influence over the king and was often able to control who was allowed to meet with Louis XV. She sometimes even made public statements on his behalf and would act as the unofficial prime minister. People tend to put the blame on her when it comes to France's failure in the 7 Years' War and attributing to the disaster that was Louis XV's reign due to the king's favoritism towards her. However, Madame de Pompadour was more than just a tantalizing mistress. She was also a famous patron of the arts. She curated and commissioned artists and musicians for her royal court, and played an important role in the French Enlightenment, patronizing figures like Voltaire, and protecting the authors, contributors to Diderot's encyclopedia with her political power.
Number 7, Joan of Art. Many stories and legends about Joan of Arc have arisen over the years, being referred to as a witch, sadly bringing her to an early grave by being burned at the stake. What is not known about her is her strength in helping the French fight back against the British and leading the French army into a victory, and ultimately strengthening the French army and people. The only reason she is not higher ranking is because this is a list for the most underrated people, not for the coolest people in history. But I would probably say she'd get a solid second place.
Number 6, Christine Dickerson. Raised at court in Paris and widowed early in life, she became the first woman in France, and possibly all of Europe, to make a living solely through writing. Christine Dickerson's writing started with love ballads about her dead husband and were enjoyed by the people of the court. She eventually transitioned into more feminist topics, and although it criticized the patriarchy, it was well received because it was based in Christian virtue and morality. Her most famous books are Le Dite de la Rose and Le Trésor de la Cité des Dames, which both countered misogyny and the oppression of women in medieval France. Today, Dickerson is considered one of the earliest feminists in European history.
5, Maria Teresa. The Archduchess of Austria, Maria Teresa, was an absolute monarch who co-reigned Austria-Hungary with her husband and then her son. Her success strengthened Austria's military, enforcing compulsory primary education for children and influenced other countries to acknowledge female rulers. Although she failed to protect the Austrian territories from Prussia, during the 7 Years' War, she formed alliances with long-term rivals France and Russia. To bring her country to peace, she, unlike many other absolutist rulers, she rejected most Enlightenment ideas, being anti-Catholic, but despite being different, she was still extremely successful monarch.
Number 4, Ignaz Semmelweis. Known as the father of infection control, Dr. Ignaz Semmelweis was a Hungarian obstetrician who connected post-delivery mortality rates with exposure to cadaveric material. While working as an assistant in the maternity ward of the Allgemeine Krankenhaus, Semmelweis deduced that the high mortality rates of women delivered by physicians was connected to the fact that infection spread by cross-contamination with cadavers. He attempted to enforce mandatory hand washing to stop the spread of disease, and mortality rates dropped by over 10% as a result. However, the senior medical staff didn't accept his conclusions and took away his teaching position. He fled to Budapest and became the head of obstetrics at St. Rochus Hospital, where he enforced mandatory hand washing and instrument cleaning to decrease post-delivery mortality rates. Despite his accurate theories, Semmelweis lacked professionalism in publishing and proving his findings, so he is ultimately ignored until germ theorists revisited his work decades later.
Number 3, the most current pick, the former president of Serbia from 1989 to 1990. Although his power was only for a little bit over a year, he changed Serbia drastically. Ethnic cleansing, or the Bosnian genocide, was a horrific time for over 8,000 non-Serbians in hopes of cleansing the people of Yugoslavia.
Number 2, Pope John Paul II. Originally Karol Joseph Wojtyła, Pope John Paul II was the first non-Italian pope in over 4.5 centuries and the first from a non-Slavic country. His pontification and strong Polish nationalism aided the Solidarity movement to end Soviet communism in Poland. He used his influence to deter the use of violence and political oppression, and he issued apologies to several religious groups on behalf of all Catholics, most notably Jews and Muslims. The Pope was also a victim of an attempted assassination in St. Peter's Square in 1981, and shocked the world when he personally visited his attacker to forgive him. Pope John Paul II's political and religious influence was unmatched across European history, and his legacy of a peacemaker will continue to be remembered for years to come.
Honorable mentions. Anne of Austria. Anne of Austria, though a great leader, is nothing extremely notable to be a true underrated person in history. But she was the mother and temporary ruler of France until Louis XIV became king. Catherine de' Medici. Catherine de' Medici, although a well-known French ruler, is sadly not on the list because she is but still an honorable mention, as she is known to have involvements in the massacre.
St. Bartholomew's.
Marquis de Lafayette. The man, the myth, the legend himself, Marie-Joseph Paulus Robespierre de Mortier. Marquis de Lafayette is by far the most underrated person in European history.
I mean, just look at him.
Sexy French aristocrat turned esteemed military general, Lafayette worked directly with George Washington to defeat the British in the American Revolutionary War.
He advocated for a constitutional monarchy and was one of the most powerful men in France, beginning of the French Revolution and the July Revolution of 1830.
A man as beautiful and historically important as he is deserves to be remembered in the AP European History framework. But somehow, his influence didn't make it into the curriculum or onto the AP exam. For now, we will continue to adore his soft eyes and impressive thighs as we continue to complain to the College Board about how Lafayette was single-handedly the most underrated person in European history.
Long live Lafayette.